And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus, 107 in the afternoon. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki, along with our wonderful, talented Ag Director, Bridgette Readel. And happy Tuesday, Bridgette. Sorry I was not able to be with you yesterday.
Well, no problem at all. We had a great fill-in host, Marcia, here, who's one of our sponsors.
She's always a good fill-in. She has plenty to talk about.
We do. And Marcia's got a long history in agronomy. So just being able to draw from what she knows and who she's talked to recently. Marcia travels an area that I used to very extensively, both Dakotas and Montana. So you pick up a lot from the whole region, not just one particular area.
Right. Exactly. And boy, weather-wise, we could use some rain around here. I think we all know that. In fact, I posted an article on our website, WDAYradionow.com, kind of going over we've got a couple of storms coming our way over the next week. And I had a comment on there. One of our farmers, she's like, I know we need the rain, but we're almost done. Can you hold it off for a little bit longer? Sorry, you're going to probably have to take a day break tomorrow. As we do have rain in the forecast. There's a little bit of rain on radar right now around the Devil's Lake Basin into northwest Minnesota. Also, some showers breaking out just around the Alex area, northeastward towards Brainerd. We'll continue to see these showers kind of increase in coverage as we head towards evening. If you have any outdoor plans this afternoon, we're just looking at a lot of cloud cover with temperatures in the low to mid 50s across the area. We'll make it into the mid to upper 50s. So temperatures, again, above normal. And then more widespread showers overnight tonight as we bottom out in the lower 40s. And a blustery day tomorrow. We're looking at winds out of the north at 15 to 25. Some rain in the morning. We're looking at about a quarter to a third of an inch of rainfall across much of the area. With highs tomorrow only in the mid 40s. But you factor in a wind out of the north at 15 to 25. We'll have wind chills in the 30s tomorrow. So if you haven't gotten that jacket out yet, you might want to dust it off.
I think the most important question people have is, what's it going to be like for Halloween? Number one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a listener in Iowa ask, are they anticipating more rainfall to the south? I think that track might be heading across South Dakota.
Yep.
Are we missing out?
Well, we're missing out on the heavier rain. First, let's hit the topic of Halloween. Halloween looks chilly, but pretty close to normal, mid to upper 40s across the area. That's close to normal. And it should be dry, partly cloudy, winds not that strong. Now, during trick-or-treating hours, we'll probably see temperatures slide off into the lower 40s, maybe upper 30s in some areas. That's still not bad because we'll have light winds. So, I mean, a jacket, but we've had much worse Halloweens around here than what's coming up on Thursday. So, all in all, not bad. Now, the main storm track over the next the next storm, which is tonight and tomorrow, the main track is going to be to our south. There's going to be parts of Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, and into southern Iowa that between now over the next 7 to 10 days pick up anywhere between 3 and 8 inches of rain. So we're not going to be anywhere close to that. If we picked up a half inch to an inch, that would be the maximum for us for the next week to 10 days.
Well, we're going to take what we can get.
Right.
I know that folks down south of us will also take whatever they can get. And there has been some discussion about potentially that storm in the western South Dakota being snow, but we're a long way from seeing any of that here, is my guess.
That's right. So I'm going to give you one guess. There's a place that receives snow, which you wouldn't think of. They received snow the other day before we did. I mean, it's a place you were like, no way did they receive snow.
And considering I was traveling yesterday and didn't watch any news, let's just go with Arizona.
Hawaii.
Hold on. It was that island in Hawaii.
I was right.
You were right.
I wasn't just a random guess. I was just trying to be silly.
No. It was the main island in Hawaii. And I mean, it's not unheard of. It's up around 10,000 feet. And they received 2 inches of snow. And travel was not recommended because they had wind with it up on the big island. It's not unheard of, but let's see if I can butcher the name. Oh man, you're gonna make this into a sounder too. Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa Hey, that's not bad. Those two summits received the snow.
So my one time I was in Hawaii, I remember it was probably January, February-ish, standing in a gift shop and there was a TV on in there
Uh-huh.
and I'm buying sunscreen, listening to the news say there's a winter storm warning. And I looked around because that's true. As you look at some of those islands, there's 7 different microclimates
Oh,
as you
yeah.
go up those mountains. So snow, tropical rain, anything can happen.
It's
They make
crazy.
us look like we're, a standard day in the park
Right.
versus some of our weather.
Yeah.
Yes.
No doubt. No doubt about it. Also, I posted, and you might want to check this out. So we are in, let's see, the fourth week, between the third and fourth week of our new LRC cycle. And we all know the first couple of weeks started out very dry. I think we picked up maybe 0.2 of an inch over the first 2 weeks of the cycle. Now we're getting into a mini part of what we're going to call the stormy part of the cycle, at least one part of the stormy part, where we're seeing a couple of storms roll through the midsection of the country. And again, the main track with these systems, for the most part, is to our south, although we are right on the northern end of that. So we'll take, like you said, Bridgette, we'll take what we can get. Now, after this, most of our models are pushing a nice return to warm weather, not only for this weekend. I'll tell you what, tailgating Saturday looks absolutely phenomenal. Early November, and we're talking about temperatures close to 60 for tailgating on Saturday. That's unheard of. And then even after our storm next week, I know. The following weekend, so that'd be what, the 9th and 10th, I see a push of 50s and 60s coming back into much of the northern plains. I mean, that's just, you'd like to think we're going to pay for it, but we're going into the 10th of November with temperatures in the 50s to near 60. We can't complain. We can't, except for the dryness.
Mother Nature fixes it, and whatever the almanac, the LRC says, whatever side you want to argue, somehow Mother Nature balances that out. So for those of you buying seed, if you're thinking maybe you should look at shorter date corn next year because you might not be able to plant till June, that's a thought.
Right.
Keep it in mind.
And again, put mark November 27th. That's the Wednesday day before Thanksgiving. We will have our LRC winter and spring outlook. So we'll go over what even if our cycle length is not set by then, we will have a pretty firm grasp on what not only the winter will hold, but also will we have to deal with these drought conditions into spring, or will we see timely rains? So all of that, November 27th.
That typing was me adding it to my calendar. Okay, we're good now.
Good deal.
Thought I should mark it down.
Right, exactly. So we've got a special. We always have special guests on today, and
sure we do. We have great guests.
Greg's been on with us before.
We're going to meet with Greg Stemen. He is our farm finance insider. He's with Starion Bank, and I really have a long list of questions for him, and I think I sent all of them to Greg, but especially right now as we see harvest happening, folks are thinking about, did I make money? Did I not? They're going to go in and see the tax accountants pretty soon. And I think that also leads to a big discussion with their bankers. Frankly, I saw a headline earlier this morning that anticipates a big upsurge in operating loans, the dollar amounts that farmers are going to need going into 2025. And I'm curious what Greg may be able to say to weigh in on some of that. And also, there's more and more discussion about how farmers can go ahead and start buying farm ground. If we do vote down property tax in North Dakota, I have my thoughts on it, but if we do eliminate property tax in the state of North Dakota, that really opens us up for outside investors to come in and buy more land, not having to pay a property tax, and then owning that, which is going to make it difficult for farmers to be able to compete for that same acre at times. So a lot of those things weigh in. We're going to want to talk about those with Greg. And Dean, just one little highlight you missed yesterday.
What?
I announced with Marcia that we are opening up applications for a assistant ag director kid. We're looking for 4-H or FFA members between the ages of freshman in high school to 21. That's the age when kids age out, if you will, out of 4-H or FFA. I'm looking for kids who have a background in ag, who have an interest in communications, farm broadcasting, and so much more. Once a month, we'll have a student join us on the show. They'll be there to help talk about ag headlines, interview guests, and so much more. So
Well,
folks who are interested, they can start emailing me.
that's awesome. And I'll tell you, the FFA people that we've had on here already have just been,
Mhm.
I mean, just they've been rock stars. It's been incredible. So looking forward to it. That'll be great.
It'll be fun. So,
Yeah.
for kids that are interested, or if you're a parent or a grandparent who's listening, you can start sending me emails, ag@flagfamily.com, and I will return that with the application process so we can get this ball rolling. As soon as I find somebody, we're going to start negotiating dates to bring them on air. But meanwhile, we will have Greg Stemen with Starion Bank joining us next. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back. Welcome back to Weather Neg in Focus. So glad that you're joining us today, especially with our discussion with Greg Stemen. This is our farm finance insider segment, and Greg is going to help us answer a pile of questions that we've got going on. I saw a headline this morning talking about a real surge in the amount that farmers are going to need to increase for operating loans, going from 24 to 25 because of the depressed commodity prices, and then also when it comes to buying more farmland this year. And Greg, I know you're a state legislator as well, and I apologize if I'm putting you on the spot here. You can always tell me you're not prepared to answer the question today. But when I think about this from a farm perspective, if we lose property tax in North Dakota, that could put our farmers in a really a really bad position when it comes to buying land. As a banker, do you have any insights you want to share for those who might be thinking about buying property this year?
Well, as a banker, I will echo your sentiments, your concerns regarding the property tax issue. Just a basic fact: we're going to see about $1.2 billion leave our state's economy if that property tax issue passes. And the reason I say that, about 37 to 40% of our property tax revenue comes from the Amazons, the Walmarts, the McDonald's, things along those lines. All of a sudden, those dollars just literally disappear from our state's economy. So that's a pretty big hit. But getting back to your point, when it comes to purchasing land, you want to think about a number of things. I think one of the reasons that land was able to maintain its value for so long was that interest rates stayed so low. And even as the interest rates kind of crept up, we didn't see a huge depression in the ag real estate market. It really kind of stayed strong, in part because of something you've referenced already, Bridgette, strong commodity prices. But right now, what we're seeing after a 50 basis point reduction in borrowing rates and then another potential 25 basis points coming up, we might see the reduction in interest rates offset the lower commodity prices. Ag real estate is still extremely valuable. It's still extremely in demand. But when you sit down and think about, you got to think about what you can afford, what can you cash flow, and what kind of terms can you get on your ag real estate. You referenced a spike in operating loans because of depressed commodity prices. Well, what we've seen is those depressed commodity prices have really chipped away at some strong working capital reserves that even some of your top borrowers had. In order to absorb some losses, they kind of have to jump into that working capital, and that forces them to access a little bit larger operating line. So, getting back to the ag real estate, anytime you can find, get a family discount type deal, you better take something along those lines. Then you have to decide, do you want to finance through normal terms? Do you want to look at maybe a potential contract for deed if you can get more favorable terms along those lines? And sit down, we've talked about this many times, have a discussion with your banker, have a discussion with your tax accountant, your advisory board, for lack of a better term. Seek out some advice on, hey, does this land make sense? Make sure you know the little things, like what's the production index, and what's the percentage of wetlands. In a normal year, am I getting a 125 acre quarter? Or am I getting one where I can get 150 acres every year? So those things all matter when it factors into considering about considerations regarding purchase of ag real estate.
And Greg, we got an email question from one of our listeners saying that, this kind of piggybacks off of what Bridgette was talking about, if property taxes are eliminated and how this will affect our rural areas. The question is, if we lose property taxes in our rural areas, is it true that our ambulance, fire department, school consolidations and that will explode, or will the legacy fund take care of that to help our rural and farming communities?
Well, it's a fair question. I am not interested in scare tactics. When I go back to talking about the $1.2 billion per biennium, that's not a scare tactic. That's a financial fact. Mm-hmm. What you look at is we aren't getting rid of property tax. We're simply transferring the obligation to the state level. And we already use legacy fund earnings to the tune of in excess of $500 million per biennium for things along to help townships, to help counties with those types of infrastructure projects. Those dollars would simply get rolled into the new obligation that voters would put in the hands of the state legislators. What I get concerned about, Dean, when you come to your smaller rural areas, mm-hmm. all of the budgets are going to get frozen at 2024 levels. So my first concern is the people that budgeted poorly get rewarded. The people that budgeted in a very lean manner get penalized. But let's say we're 5 years down the road, 6 years down the road. McCluskey, North Dakota says, hey, we need a new building for our volunteer fire department. Well, they don't have the tax base to fund something like that. So all of a sudden, where are they forced to go? They're forced to go to the state legislature, and say, can you help us out with this? Well, that's going to be tough. Your rural areas are really going to get hit the hardest because of their inability to raise additional revenue and the tax base that they just don't have that can generate the type of revenue they may need for some major projects. And I'm a small town farm kid, and I have rural North Dakota is very endearing to me. I think it's vital. Our ag sector is our state is so dependent on the ag economy in our state, and I don't want to see us put our rural people, our rural communities in tough financial positions.
That's a great answer,
Good
Greg.
point. Yeah.
So I'm going to go back into your banking experiences, Greg. And when you have farmers that were ending the season, we've harvested, we got done early, we had good bushels in a lot of places, not everywhere, but in a lot. And you have a lendee come to you and ask, how do I begin the process? I think there's a piece of farm ground, whether in the family or from a neighbor, that I want to buy. Do you have a specific set of steps that you go through with them in order to help walk through that process?
Really a good question. I think first of all, I encourage land ownership. If the opportunity and there's a reasonable price that comes along, and you have a chance to put together an offer, I will sit down and say, hey, let's figure out a way to structure this. Now, if it's a younger producer and they're not sitting on a ton of working capital, what you want to find out is, do you have some cash that you can put into this? A cash down payment always helps offset what your payment's going to be. And if you don't have the cash to come up with the down payment, which is typically, depending on your lending institution, loan to value on ag real estate is going to be somewhere, I'm not speaking for everybody, but maybe 65 to 75%. So in other words, let's say I'm just pulling numbers. Let's say you have $100,000 piece of ag real estate. A lot of institutions will lend you anywhere from say $65 to $75,000. You got to come up with that other 25 to 35 on your own. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be in cash. It can be maybe in some real estate that you own free and clear already, that you can maybe utilize that as for lack of a better term, down payment. In other words, that's just additional collateral for the loan. So you'd have the $100,000 piece of property would be collateral, but then you'd also maybe have another $80,000 piece of property that combined, those two provide the adequate security to secure that loan for that ag real estate that you're purchasing. So I'm just using those random numbers, but they're easier when it comes to talking about percentages and loan to value. So what you want to do is find, what structure best fits you, and then can you afford the payment? And can you afford the payment using your average yield and your average commodity prices? And if not, I mean, as much as you want to own ag real estate, don't do it to your own detriment. I've always told producers, I want your business, but I don't ever want your business at the expense of your business. And make sure it's a feasible transaction. Make sure it's a payment that you can make every year. And if it's maybe you have to say, I'm going to find some alternative sources of revenue. Maybe I do some custom work. Maybe I pick up a second job in the winter months, whatever it might be. But ag real estate, owning property is something that I think a lot of people take a lot of pride in. But if you're going to do it, make sure you've had thorough discussions with all the people that you take advice from.
All right, great. That sounds great, Greg. Greg, can you stay with us for one more segment, or do you have a meeting to get to?
I certainly can.
All right,
I certainly
awesome.
can.
All right. So if you have any questions for Greg or for Bridgette or myself, shoot us a call, 701-293-9000, or you can email us, weather@flagfamily.com or ag@flagfamily.com. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. Thank you to Steffes Group. They have been a sponsor for our Here We Grow project. Again, we custom farm 20 acres of corn, and we're giving our profits to Farm Rescue. Good news coming out of the Steffes Group. In fact, they have had an acquisition of the Bruce Shapansky Auctioneers in Tisdale, Saskatchewan. Going to expand their range of where they can get equipment and do more land sales. That may be of interest to many of you, especially if you're looking for different pieces of equipment for trade this year. That secondary equipment market has softened up a bit, particularly in combines. So if you're looking for something with good inventory, talk to the folks over at Steffes Group. We have a guest with us today, and that would be Greg Stemen. He is with Starion Bank, and he is part of our Farm Finance Insider segment, which we're going a little bit long today, Greg, because we have a lot of good questions for you. So we appreciate you taking some extra time with us. One of the questions that something we stockpiled for today that we wanted to ask is, as a banker, do you have any concern with more and more farmer digital payments? You know, when you think about grain checks from Bushel, or if you're seeing farmers that are doing more things, maybe even transactive with Venmo, et cetera, does that worry you, or is that something that's a little harder to keep track of when it comes to operating loans and so forth?
It's a really good question. I won't say it worries me. I think oftentimes it's the uptake for those types of technological advances oftentimes happens with the younger generations, and certainly generations that are younger and more capable than I am. But the other thing that I think probably outpaces the use is just the advancement in the understanding of how cybersecurity measures need to be in place. And I think especially with financial institutions, we are even more um, uh, more committed to our customers to say confidentiality is of the utmost importance. We want to have the strongest uh, cybersecurity cybersecurity measures in place that it's possible for us to have. And I mean, does it cost us money? It certainly does. But you can't put a price on the confidentiality that we want to promise to our customers. So I think making sure that we have adequate technology and we're working with products that are sound, that are tested, that are proven. A lot of those types of thoughts go into behind the scenes decisions. But I think it's absolutely going to happen. It's going to continue to happen, and the timeliness of it, actually the security of it, when it's done right, are really very important and very valuable for our customers. So we certainly want to stay on the cutting edge when it comes to those things, but we never want to do it at the risk of our customers' confidential information.
And Greg, recently we've had wildfires out west. Thankfully, we've got those under control. How do you deal with a producer after a wildfire happens on their land?
I appreciate you guys sharing that question before this, because I thought about any type of natural disaster. I think the first thing that our producers have to do is, I mean, that's a shock to the system. That's a traumatic event. I don't care whether it's a wildfire,
Yeah.
whether it's a tornado,
Yeah.
whether it's a flood. These are traumatic things. First thing you got to do is maybe just be willing to listen. The last thing that anybody who's just experienced that type of loss wants to deal with is, well, you need to do this now, and you need to do this now, you need to do this. Maybe be there and listen to them and let them vent a little bit. And then say, hey, listen, if you want to talk, we're here. There are a number of different things that you want to keep in mind. First of all, we can oftentimes have determined a state emergency, and then I think our state leaders do a great job of communicating with the federal government. And what we saw in the western part of the state, over 111,000 acres of lost property due to fire. That's devastating, but it's also, can we get some access to some low interest funds? Can we get some access to some federal grants that might maybe offset the early hit right away? And then what do we start thinking about long term? And that's where, as a banker, you want to be available at the right time to say, all right, what do we need to do? Is there something we need to put in place to not only replenish what was lost, but to be able to maintain what our normal operations require? So I think it's just a matter of be calm about it, be supportive,
Mhm.
be understanding, and just realize sometimes the last thing people need after dealing with a traumatic event like that is advice or suggestions. Sometimes it's better just to sit and listen.
You're a bit of an agronomic therapist at that point.
Right.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely are. Yeah.
Yeah, because everybody needs that chance to vent. And when you're talking to someone who's associated with your finances, whether it's your banker or your accountant, your tax preparer, you're going to need to walk through that with them. And everybody needs to feel a little bit better about the situation, if at all possible.
Absolutely. Couldn't
So
agree more.
just last question I had beforehand, before we get back to a listener question, and that was, when working with your clients on their loans and so forth, is a service that you offer helping them write land leases or cash rent officers, or is that more of a, we don't want to do that as bankers because that could be a conflict of interest? But if folks are looking for advice, if it's not you, who should they go to?
I appreciate the question. I really do. Um, I've never been accused of being an attorney, and I'm not going to start playing one in real life. But what I will do is I will suggest that you sit down and visit with an attorney. And the reason I say that, they're from this is what their area of expertise is. But I will say, I think some concepts to keep in mind, especially for producers, is one of the things, and this is just a personal thing that I kind of appreciated when we had really good weather and we had really good commodity prices and great yields. There were some farmers making a lot of money, and there were some, and they were doing very well. And then all of a sudden, when the commodity prices went south, they're going to the landowners and saying, "Hey, can you cut me some slack on the rent?" I My suggestion as a producer would be to say, "Hey, when you're having a really good year, whether it's yield, and or commodity prices, or a combination of both, I would say don't ever be afraid to bonus your landlords in the good years, especially if you expect them to work with you in the more lean years. And maybe that allows
Hmm.
you to have a lower base rental. And I'm not saying this from a legal standpoint, I'm saying it more from a philosophical standpoint is, hey, be willing when things are really good for you. It's probably not a bad idea to make sure the landlord understands that too. That way, when things aren't great, they don't necessarily expect the bonuses, but they know that when times are good, they may benefit a little bit as well. So working some type of bonus structure into your cash rent, or sharecrop rent, I don't think is necessarily a bad idea. It's at least worth considering moving forward. That way, it kind of allows you to maybe be a little more consistent with your projections.
But I think you can be a resource, Greg, to those who are coming in the door and wanting to talk about their operating loan, because you can understand what's happening for average rent, production indexes on nearby land, et cetera. So you're probably more a resource than the person who's helping to write the lease payment. Would that be fair?
Absolutely. That's a much more comfortable position for someone like me than it is to try to step into the writing, making sure the proper legal language is written down.
That's a good spot to be. So, one last question for you, Greg, and this is a listener comment slash question. And one of our listeners was
Hmm.
listening to our earlier discussion about property tax, and his perspective was there are already state legislatures that will put a 3% increase or COLA for property taxes. He feels that if he's not paying his dollars in property tax, he'd be 100% more willing to pay for other needs, and hoping that the out of state money against Measure 4 with those ads are not painting a death of the state scenario. Any comments you can make back towards some of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everybody has, by the way, if we could eliminate property tax, I'd be all for it. Let's not forget that property tax is not being eliminated. The cost is being shifted. And
Okay.
there's already 1.8 billion per biennium that the state contributes to local political subs. Well, that 1.8 billion will now go to be part of the 3.2 billion. So you won't necessarily get expanded services. It won't be nearly what you'd hope. The second thing is, to your point, I don't know of any out-of-state interests what they're contributing. What I am saying is it's a fact. 1.2 billion at least will be taken out of our state's economy every 2 years. That's a big hit for a state whose biennial budget is, consists of 7 billion in federal funds, and so a total make 13 in state funds. That's about an 8 or 9% hit, when it comes to what a state our size can absorb. And then the last thing is, it's I want to make sure that if, worst case scenario, I want well-equipped fire departments, well-equipped law enforcement. I want to have services that get our roads clear after a blizzard, which are extremely common events. And those things cost money, and and those services matter to our people, especially in the rural areas. So there's going to be a cost for that. Do we always necessarily agree what that cost should be? No, probably not. But I do think, and if there are legislators that have said, hey, there's going to be a 3% COLA, it's not in the policy. It's not in what the people are voting on right now. And I think that's maybe the biggest frustration with some people is there are a lot of corrections that would have to be made to this measure if it were approved, because the way it is as it's written doesn't address a lot of the issues that it'll create. So there's a number of unintended consequences, but it's also it's worth a healthy discussion. My last thing, and I'm sorry for boring you guys with this stuff.
You're okay.
No, you're
good.
fine.
The state legislature does not levy property tax. We levy 1 mil in the entire state. And that goes directly to the University of North Dakota Medical School. I personally believe this is a local issue, and there are city councils, county commissions, school boards, and park boards that have the authority to levy property tax. They are the ones that levy property tax at the local level. And my concern, and I will openly say I'm on the conservative side of the aisle. This whole thing about centralizing this funding in Bismarck when it's a local issue is a little antithetical to my conservative principles. And I believe if we're upset with how taxes are at the local level, that's where we should be addressing it. So these are just my personal thoughts. I understand it's a very controversial topic, but we'll see how things shake out in a week.
Greg, we really want to say thank you for helping address some of that, particularly in reference to farmland and so forth, because as an ag banker with years of experience, you give us a great perspective. So thank you for sharing those thoughts.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So thanks, folks. We want to come back and continue to go through headlines and weather. If you should have questions, remember, you can reach out to us on the Red Wing Shoe line, 701-293-9000. You can email Dean, weather@flagfamily.com. I'm ag@flagfamily.com. You can be watching us on Facebook, YouTube, and Acres TV. We'll come back to wrap up all those headlines after this.
And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus, 1:51 in the afternoon. Temperatures outside across the area in the mid-50s. There's a few spots already poking into the upper 50s, and some areas will be lucky enough to hit 60, maybe even into the lower 60s for this afternoon. Not much rain on radar. Most of this rain, there's still a few light showers out around the Alex area and up towards Devil's Lake, but other than that, if you have outdoor plans this afternoon, should be okay. We're even seeing a little filtered sunshine peek through here in the FM area. And I think most of the rain now is going to hold off until overnight. So if you have any outdoor plans this afternoon, even into the early evening, I think you'll be able to squeak those in. Tonight, rain. Tomorrow, rain, at least through the morning hours. And then we'll stay dry and warm it up as we head towards the weekend. Gosh, I can't believe we're going to have temperatures approaching 60 degrees again. As we head into the upcoming weekend, at least Saturday. That's just for this time of the year, and we still haven't had any snow. Hey, no worries on that.
That'll change.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
always does.
I mean, we did it last year. We had snow here in October, and everybody gave a big
Here we go.
What if it stays? and then it changed. So, and we've been through this. I remember you asked me one day, when was the last time we had such a late snowfall?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we agreed that it was like 2009, where we didn't really get snow until almost New Year's. It was like Christmas time.
Yep.
I think that was the year. I didn't write it down, but I think that was the year.
I would have to double check, but I think I think you're right. So it's
okay.
We've been pretty lucky, and I think we'll continue that trend. As I said, even after next week's storm bringing rain in here, I think we're going to see a return to mild temperatures as we head towards the 10th and 11th of November, and that should carry us through probably mid-month, so about 4 or 5 days of some mild weather returning. Just unbelievable. I mean, if we can get into mid-November without any measurable snow around here, that's just that's a few less days we have to worry about winter weather, that's for sure. We've got Terry on the line. He's on line one. Terry, you got a question for us?
Yeah, say, Dean, that's what I was going to ask you about. You know, with weather going to be, pretty nice up through 9th, 10th of November.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for this winter to really go south, I mean, we would have to have some pretty bad stuff in the next, 20 days? After that?
Oh, that's a good point.
That's a very good point. Yeah, according to the LRC. So let's backtrack to when the LRC started in early October. The first couple of weeks of the LRC were mainly dry. We saw a little light precip, and it was above normal temperatures. I think we saw 2 cool shots, and they lasted a day. So what we know out of that, then, the start of each LRC cycle will start out mild. Now, we haven't, I mean, we're 3 weeks in, and we haven't really had any cool, chilly weather. We're getting a quick punch here tomorrow, lasting a couple of days. So you translate that into January, and we'll probably have a pretty cold shot coming in. Now, these storms that are coming through now, bringing us rain, will more than likely bring us snow in the next cycle. Now, the next 3 weeks, like you said, Terry, the next 3 weeks are pretty crucial around here in terms of what the rest of our winter and spring. I mean, we need rainfall for the spring as well. What that's going to hold. Now, after mid-month, or after about the 11th, 12th, we're going to stay warm. And then once we get towards mid-month, we're starting to see that ridge break back down, and we're going to see a lot of storms entering the West Coast. Now, where they go from there, we'll have to wait and see. But that, I think, from the 15th through the end of November will tell a lot before the cycle sets on what the rest of the winter holds. But you're 100% right, Terry. The next few weeks are gonna, I'd say the next 3 weeks are gonna be a big tell on, are we gonna have a milder than normal winter, or and what about snowfall?
I do hope we get the snow and get the moisture.
We really need it.
Not crazy snow.
Right.
Right.
But, enough to make a difference in the spring.
Well, and the National Weather Service just put out they call it an experimental model that they're testing, and it's Grand Forks is the only office that is using this, and so they put out a preliminary outlook for the winter, and I'm trying to get somebody from the Weather Service on air with us to talk about this new model that they're experimenting. And I believe they had between 5 and 8 storms for this upcoming winter. So, I mean, right now, according to the LRC, well, right now we've got 2 in the first cycle. Let's see what happens between now and the end of that first cycle. It might end up being 5 to 6, 7 storms. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, that LRC it's amazing.
We love it.
Absolutely amazing.
We love it. Hey, thanks, Terry. Have a great day, man.
Yep.
All right. Great question.
And
Great question.
I
I love
hope
people
Terry
that
has-
I love people that follow along with the LRC. I think it's great.
well, and I really hope that he also has our LRC date booked so he can be part of the weather special, because we like it when Terry's listening along and marking his calendar to see if we're right.
Absolutely. And we'll have Gary on that day, on the 27th, obviously. And Gary will be able to answer some questions. One thing he's not going to give away, he's not going to give away the cycle length. He wants to keep that kind of under wraps. He wants that for paid customers only, which is understandable. We've given it away over the last few years, but I think you'll kind of get a general, if you follow along with the LRC, and once we put our LRC calendar out, and that'll probably be late November, I'll start putting that together. You'll kind of be able to put the pieces to the puzzle together on when the storms hit early, and you'll be able to figure out the cycle length. But it's I don't see a colder than normal winter. I just don't. I know La Nina.
Well, okay, hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
Okay.
Tell me what you mean by normal or on average.
Well, I mean, last year obviously was a warmer than normal winter. I don't see it that warm.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't see it that warm,
Okay.
but I don't think it's going to be. We'll get our cold snaps, but I think we're going to rebound quickly. I think it's going to be a roller coaster winter. So that's not great news for ice fishing, snowmobiling. I mean, we'll see. Again, like Terry said, these next 3 to 4 weeks are crucial on not only moisture for our ag community for the winter, but also for the upcoming spring and summer as well. So stay tuned. Well, we want to thank everybody. For joining us this afternoon. For Bridgette, myself, thank you very much, and be sure to stay tuned. #1 show in the Midwest is coming up next. That's a Jay Thomas Show. Don't go anywhere.